Fundación Tracy presenta el programa Fénix. La psicología del logro.
Session 12, Software for the Brain.
What is the most precious resource in your life? Well, if you're like I am, your most precious resource is time. And according to all the recent studies that have been done lately, adults in America and Canada and other countries value time ahead of money in almost every instance. Now, as a result of what we've talked about in our previous sessions, with the fact that if you change your internal world, you change your external world, one of the things that begins to well up inside of you is impatience. If you believe that if you do change your internal programming, your external world will change to conform with it, then you're probably in a hurry to change that internal programming. And in this session, we're going to talk about how you can bring about rapid and permanent internal programming change. We call this session Software for the Brain. Now, I don't know a lot about computers, but I do know this. I do know that a computer has a certain amount of utility as a piece of hardware, but what makes a computer work are the programs that you run in it. And the more sophisticated and complex and productive the programs, the more valuable is the computer. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take the things that we talked about in terms of mental programming, visualization, and affirmation, and so on, and we're going to combine them into a series of techniques that you can use to multiply or to speed up the process at which your new thoughts and ideas are accepted by your subconscious mind and then go to work and attract them into your reality. And the first technique we're going to talk about is what I call written programming technique. It's one of the simplest of all, and yet it is so powerful that it's almost scary. Again, I've said this to many audiences, but I'll say it to you, is that if you just practice this one technique, it will be worth 10 times the time and price of this program. If it's all you learn is this one technique, it will have an astonishing difference on your results. When I first learned about this and applied it some years ago, I couldn't believe how effective it was. And all it requires to use is discipline plus one of these. Now, this is what I use. It's a spiral notebook. It costs here $1.99, Walgreens Drugs. All it has is lined pages. And what you do is you use this to write and rewrite your goals. It's very simple. You buy one for $1.99 and you use this as the basis of written programming technique. Let me explain to you how it works. Written programming technique is based on the fact that we learn or take in information three ways. We take in information auditorily. In other words, we hear the information or we speak the information. We take it in visually. We see the information, and we take it in kinesthetically as we feel the information. Now, any one of these is a good way of learning, or if you like, bringing in information to the unconscious mind. However, the more of them you can combine simultaneously, along with some of the other mental principles and programming techniques that we've talked about, the more rapidly the information is accepted. Sometimes, if you combine information in the right way, it's accepted instantaneously as a permanent change in your unconscious programming. Written programming technique is based on this, as are some of the other programming techniques which we'll talk about in the next few minutes. Written programming technique is based on the fact that when you write something down, it requires total concentration, law of concentration. You cannot write accurately and correctly and think of anything else at the same time. So writing requires concentration. It also requires intensity. It also requires visual, because you can't write without looking. And when you do write, you have a tendency to what is called sub-vocalize. In other words, you say the words to yourself as you're writing. So even though you can't hear them with a conscious ear, you hear them internally. And kinesthetically, you move and you feel. It requires tremendous mental, emotional, and physical energy to write. So written programming technique simply says this, is that every single morning, without fail, you rewrite your major goals. After you've done your reading, you rewrite your major goals. Now, this whole process, by the way, can take about 2 minutes, maybe 5. You may get to the point, as I do, where you'll write 10, 20, 30, sometimes even an hour. But you just rewrite your major goals as positive, present tense, personal affirmations. In other words, Your goals could be, I earn X number of dollars per month. I weigh X number of pounds. I am outstanding in my field. I do this. I achieve. I accomplish. I choose, and so on. Whatever you want to be, have, or do, you just write it out in a series of affirmations, one at a time. Now you'll find, and we'll talk about goal setting later on, you'll find that as you write your goals over and over again, an interesting thing will happen, is that your more important goals will tend to be rewritten first, and they'll tend to become clarified and to become sharper and more distinct. And every single time you rewrite your major goals, you are driving them, you are impressing them deeper into the subconscious, which leads to the guarantee that they will be expressed in your reality. Every time you rewrite your major goals, you're programming them into your subconscious, and you're setting them as a directional mechanism, the same way you would set the directional mechanism on a guided missile, so that it will move you unerringly in the direction of accomplishing it. Number 2 is close your eyes after you've rewritten your goals. Close your eyes and visualize your major goal or goals of the day as accomplished. Visualize them as a reality. What would they look like? Now, a very valuable thing to do, by the way, is cut out clippings from magazines and books and put them in your notebook so that you can actually look at a picture. Do you want to own a brand new car or a beautiful house or something like that? Well, then get a picture of it and make a very clear picture so when you write out the goal, you can look at the picture and then close your eyes and feed that picture into your subconscious mind. And then the third part, which is most important, is imagine the feeling of pleasure you would have. Imagine the feeling of pleasure you would have if you already owned it. Just imagine that it is already a reality. The way that you imagine that it's a reality is imagine that you are on a path toward your goal, and your goal is on a path toward you, and that there is a predestined time when you are ready and it's ready, when everything is ready, that you and the goal will meet. And that you cannot speed up the time. You can't make it go faster and you can't make it go slower. But what you can do is continually repeat the picture and the feeling and the description over and over again. And at exactly the right time and place, it will meet. Someday you'll probably write me a letter and you'll tell me how remarkably this has worked in your life. Because it's worked remarkably in my life and the life of many other people. Now the second point, and before we go on with this, let me give you a key point. It's called the law of relaxation. The law of relaxation is one of the most important mental laws. The law of relaxation simply says this, that in the physical world, if you want to drive a nail, the harder you hit it, the more physical effort or energy you put behind it, the faster you accomplish something in the physical world. If you want to drive a car faster, you step on the gas, which causes the engine to work harder and propels it forward. However, in the mental realm, it's exactly the opposite. The law of relaxation says that in all mental working, effort defeats itself. In all mental working, effort defeats itself. What does this mean? It means that the harder you don't try, the better it works. Now it's interesting. I'll give you a perfect example. Relationships. You will notice that in any relationship of yours that works, the harder you try to make a relationship work, the more difficult it is. Because a relationship is basically a meeting of minds. And whenever you just relax and let the relationship flow, the relationship unfolds exactly the way it should. If ever you try to speed something up or slow it down out of its own time, you create a crisis. You create tension, stress, and anxiety. So anything that has to do with mental working, anything that has to do with minds, and all interactions between people have to do with minds, anything that has to do with goals and dreams and plans requires that you just relax and let it unfold. That's why we say, close your eyes, visualize, imagine the feeling, and just relax without making any effort. And the more relaxed you are, the more rapidly the idea is accepted by the subconscious mind. Now, the next technique is what is called the quick affirmation technique, or quick programming technique. Quick programming technique is used specifically before any non-recurring event of importance. Before any non-recurring. That means an event that happens only once. For instance, if you're going to be in a sports event, or if you're going to go into an interview for a job or a raise, or if you're going to make a sales presentation. By the way, all top salespeople use this quick programming technique. It's very, very powerful. What it does is it has a temporary effect, but it sets you up psychologically, physically, mentally. It programs your self-concept and your subconscious to give you the words and actions and behaviors that are perfectly appropriate to the situation. All athletes use this, as we'll talk about in a second. Now, how do you use quick programming technique? Well, let us say that you have a talk coming up. A good friend of mine just gave a very important talk to 2,500 people. And he was very tense and worried about it. I said, look, this is all you have to do is each time you think about this talk that's coming up, just close your eyes and use this technique and just think like this. First of all, visualize the perfect outcome. Visualize the perfect outcome. In other words, visualize if you could script what was coming up, the interview with your boss, the sales presentation, so visualize the perfect outcome. In other words, the perfect outcome for a discussion about a raise would be the boss giving you the raise. The perfect outcome of a sales conversation is the person signing the sales order. The perfect outcome of a job application is getting the job. In this case, my friend's situation, his perfect outcome was a standing ovation. So he visualized a standing ovation. That's what he programmed into his mind. He saw the entire audience rising to their feet in a standing ovation at the end of the talk. Then affirm the visualization. In other words, it could be as simple as, this talk goes beautifully, or this talk is extremely successful, or I feel absolutely perfect going into this talk, or this talk is a complete success. In other words, give an affirmation that is consistent with it, and affirm the visualization, and then emotionalize it, or imagine how you would feel if you experienced it, and release. And this is the key word. And then just release it as though it had already happened. Just let it go. As though it had already happened, as though you were already past the event and the perfect outcome of the event has already occurred. As you release it and let it go, it drops like a computer card into the computer, and the subconscious computer goes to work on it. Powerful, powerful technique. And this technique is based on what is called mental rehearsal. Now, mental rehearsal is a technique that is used by all peak-performing men and women. It's used by all self-made millionaires, all outstanding salespeople, all top executives, all Olympic athletes, all world champions in any field use mental rehearsal. And mental rehearsal is the process of living the experience inside before you have it on the outside. That means before any event of importance, long, short-term, or short-term, what top performers do is they recall and relive excellence. They recall and relive excellence. In other words, they think of the last time that they engaged in a performance like this, and the satisfaction that they had, the pleasure that they had, the feeling of an excellent performance, and they take that feeling. It's almost like you have a screen here, and here's the screen. You take a split screen, and on this side of the screen, you recall the last time you did this in an excellent fashion. And on this side of the screen, you imagine the upcoming event. And then when you get this perfectly clearly in your mind, and you can see it with perfect clarity, that last triumph, that last success, the last sale that you closed, the last interview that went well, the last successful party or meeting or social engagement, then you transfer this into the new situation that's upcoming, and you transfer the feeling and the experience, and you overlay the two, so that as you anticipate the upcoming experience, you combine it with the feelings of success and pleasure and joy of the previous excellent experience. What that does is it programs the subconscious mind for you to go into that experience and engage in the same words, actions, and behaviors that got you the results of success and winning the last time. Now, what is the difference between winners and losers? Major difference between winners and losers. Can you imagine what it is? Winners versus losers. It's simply this, is that we all engage in mental rehearsal. You, me, everybody. The difference between winners and losers is this, is that prior to every event, upcoming event, losers think of the last time they went into an experience like this and it didn't work out. They think of their previous failures. They vividly imagine and think about how embarrassed, humiliated, unsuccessful, how badly they felt, and the losers relive and recall failure and poor performance. The winners insist upon reliving and recalling excellence and success. So you can tell if you're destined to be a winner or a loser simply by looking at what you think about in each upcoming event. And if you just make the decision right now to think about what you desire Ask yourself, am I thinking about what I want to happen, or am I thinking about what I'm afraid will happen? Remember, the natural tendency is to think about what you're afraid of, not what you desire. So force your mind, using the law of substitution, take your mind off of what you fear and refuse to entertain it. There's a beautiful technique that I learned many years ago. Whenever you start to think about something that's causing you to be upset or anxious or tense, just say this word very, very loud to yourself. Say, stop. Stop. It's very much the same as knocking the side of a record player and joking the needle off the record player, or slamming on a tape recorder, or shouting at a person who's saying something. Just say, stop. And what it will do is temporarily, it will stop your mind. And as it stops your mind, then switch your attention onto what you desire. And insist upon thinking about what you desire. And every single time you find your thoughts drifting back to what you're afraid of, say stop and get your mind onto what you desire. Here's a very simple diagram or graph, and it's like this. This is what you desire. This is what you fear. Now, here are you on this slope between what you desire and what you fear, going up or going down. This, however, is easy. The natural tendency of human nature is to focus on what is negative and to slide back into what they fear, what is the worst possible outcome. This requires effort. It requires a consistent effort to keep your mind on what you want. Now, most people are lazy. Most people are undisciplined. Most people are not willing to make the effort. So what they do is they have a tendency to slide into thinking about what is the worst thing that can possibly happen. They slide into negativity. That's why the great majority of people today are negative, and very few people are positive. So be alert to that. Is that whenever you find yourself thinking about something that's coming up in advance, it's natural to be filled with doubt and fear. Are natural human tendencies for a variety of reasons that we've talked about before. But the superior human being keeps their mind on what they want. The superior human being stops the negative thoughts. The superior human being concentrates on excellent performance. Now, somebody will say, well, I've never done it before. How can I concentrate, or how can I recall and relive excellence? Easy, in your imagination. You can pretend and imagine that you've done this before. Pretend that you've already succeeded at this. Think about how you would act if you were a superb success in this area. Walk as though you were a success. In neurolinguistic programming, they find that there is a physiological state or way of walking, talking, and acting that is consistent with every emotional state. And that if you walk and talk and act the same way you would if you felt confident, as we said earlier, you'll actually feel the feelings of confidence that go with the behavior. Very important. Now, here's another technique. It's called standard programming technique or standard affirmation technique. And this technique is done with cards, index cards. Or you can use just a series of goals on a piece of paper. Very powerful technique. What you do with this is that, and here's the steps to standard affirmation techniques. You set your goals. You can set 10 to 15 goals. Your subconscious mind can work on 10 to 15 goals at a time. Of course, you have to have your goals in priority, but you don't have to worry about that. About 10 to 15 goals. Number 2 is you take twice daily, morning and evening. Twice daily, morning and evening. You take some time off, where number 3, you can be with no interruptions. And then you write out your goals, again in the form of positive present tense personal affirmations. Okay, goals as positive present tense personal affirmations on cards. Now, many people advise that you use index cards so that you can slide the cards back and forth like this, and just put one on top of the other and write your goal in very, very large, clear letters so that the subconscious mind can see the goal with crystal clarity. And then you sit down with the goals and you read the goal to yourself. You read the goal or the affirmation to yourself. Read, repeat, and then close your eyes. So let us say the goal is I earn $50,000 a year. So we'll say on the card, I earn $50,000. I earn $50,000 a year. You read it, you repeat it, I earn $50,000 a year. Close your eyes and repeat it 3 to 5 times. Repeat the goal 3 to 5 times. And then step number 6 is visualize the outcome. In other words, if you earn $50,000 a year, what would be the outcome? Would it be a bigger car? Would it be a bigger house? Would it be a trip to Tahiti? Would it be a different wardrobe? Would it be a Rolex watch? In other words, visualize the outcome, not the process so much as what the result would be. Or another thing that you can do, by the way, is you can visualize the work. Let us say that you are going to earn $50,000 a year and you imagine you will earn it in your existing profession. Then visualize yourself doing the work in such an excellent fashion that it will actually generate the income. And then step number 7 is imagine the feeling. Imagine the feeling that would accompany the accomplishment of your goal. Imagine the feeling. Close your eyes, and as you sit there with your cards, looking at your cards, imagine the feeling of satisfaction as though the goal is already accomplished. Imagine the feeling of pleasure. Imagine the feeling of accomplishment. Let us say that what you're going to do is you're going to give yourself a trip to Tahiti. You're going to go to the South Seas. You're going to lay on the beach. You're going to swim in the beautiful surf. You're going to soak up the sun and get this beautiful tan. Then start thinking about that. Another thing that you can do, by the way, is get brochures on Tahiti. Get a poster of Tahiti. Get a poster of a cruise ship. Get pictures of the things that you're going to do and have and enjoy that you associate. Because the more emotions you can associate with the accomplishment of the goal, the more rapidly the subconscious accepts it as an instruction and the more rapidly you go to work on it. Now here's what I use, by the way. Here's what you can use. You can use cards like this, which are just index cards. These ones don't have any lines. But you can use cards with lines, and you just sit there and you just write out your goal, and as you read the goal, repeat it 3 to 5 times, imagine it, visualize it, see yourself doing whatever is necessary, visualize the outcome, and then just change the card and go on to the next one. The more relaxed you are when you do this exercise, because of the law of relaxation, the more rapidly the subconscious accepts it. Here's something else that you might want to get. It's one of these spiral cards with index cards throughout it that you can write a variety of different affirmations on, carry it around with you, and just flip it. Write affirmations down. Whenever you think of something that you want, write it down, and then just take some time every so often to review your affirmations. Now, one final technique is what is called sports programming technique, which combines all the others. It's used by all top Olympic athletes. It combines mental rehearsal and relaxation. It's based on what is called autogenic conditioning, which means that if you want to become better at a sport, the technique is very simple. First of all, get some instruction in the sport. Learn from an expert. Study and learn what excellent performance in the sport constitutes. Second of all, before you go to sleep or sitting in a very relaxed position, take several deep, deep breaths and relax your body, and then visualize perfect sports performance. Say you want to be a better skier. Very simple. What you do is you learn how to ski. You look at films and pictures of people skiing excellently, and then you visualize yourself actually being the skier. You close your eyes and you do 2 types of visualization. The first type of visualization is where you look at yourself actually skiing. You look at yourself and you look at your performance. Look at yourself going down the slope. Look at yourself turning, putting in the poles, twisting, and so on. You look at yourself skiing beautifully and watch yourself going almost as though you were a spectator. The second part of the visualization is you then shift your point of attention and you look at yourself from your own eyes and actually see yourself going down the slope. Sports affirmation technique is used by all the major football teams, the basketball teams, the major figure skaters, the top golfers. Virtually all Olympic athletes train in their minds over and over again. For instance, skaters will sit down, close their eyes, put on their music, and then they will go through their entire skating routine in their minds while their music is playing. What happens is, of course, that in your mind you never fall. So they program their minds over and over again. And this is based on a very simple fact, is that every time we visualize an action, we actually send measurable impulses of nerve energy to the legs, arms, muscles, and nerves that would control the muscles that we would use if we actually engaged in that action. If you want to be a better golfer, a better skier, better tennis player, better baseball player, swimmer, better public speaker, better anything, you can use sports affirmation technique to bring about rapid programming changes. The key is this: repetition, visualization, relaxation, and clarity of your goals over and over again until they are accepted by the subconscious mind as facts, until they begin to become true in your reality. And if you stick with it, it will work for you.
Session 13, Rapid Learning Techniques.
At the beginning of this seminar, we talked about human potential and about how the average person uses less than 10% of their potential, how Albert Einstein's brain was removed from his cranium when he died, and it was studied at Cornell University, and they found that he never used more than 15% of his mental potential in his entire lifetime, one of the great geniuses of this century. What does this mean, mental potential? Well, it means the ability to use our thinking capacity. It means the ability to activate the brain cells in what is called the neocortex, or the thinking brain of mankind. And one of the things we're going to talk about in this session is how you can use your brain more effectively, and some of the things that have been done to help people develop and learn rapid learning techniques, or what we call whole brain learning, accelerated learning, or even super learning. One of the things that we know is that the average person really uses not much more than 1 or 2% of their thinking capacity. That we don't use 10%, because if you could use 10% of your brain, you could accomplish anything you could dream of on this earth. Our role in this session is to show you how to use more of it. We know some things about the brain. We know one thing with regard to intelligence, is that intelligence is not a matter of IQ. Intelligence is a way of acting and a way of thinking. When we look at people who are apparently extremely intelligent, we find one thing. We find that they are not much more intelligent than you or I, but they have developed their intelligence. So let's put it this way. Intelligence is developed through effort. Intelligence is developed the same way that muscles are developed. A person who has an intelligence with regard to a business or a profession, a lawyer or a doctor or a business person, is not necessarily a person who was born with that genius. It's a person who has developed it as a result of years and years of study and practice. So look upon intelligence like a muscle. IQ is malleable. IQ, or percentage points, or mental ability, is malleable over a broad range. Remember, we talked about the case of positive expectations where one student's IQ jumped 25 points in the course of one school year. This is very common. We've had many cases on record where IQ points, in other words, the total thinking ability of an individual has jumped 10, 20, 30 points as a result of a particular way of learning or a particular way of studying. And we'll talk about some of these ideas. So IQ is malleable over a broad range. What I'm saying is that you are far smarter than you know. You are far more intelligent than you've ever given yourself credit for. We also know that IQ is a matter of self-concept. There are many people who have been found to be extremely intelligent, but because they've been brought up in negative environments, had been convinced at an early age that they weren't particularly bright. One gentleman who was encouraged to leave school in the 10th grade because they felt he was a complete academic failure was turned out later to have an IQ of 175 when he tried to enlist in the Army. After he got out of the Army, he started 6 businesses and became a multi-millionaire by the age of 28 because they proved to him that he was brilliant. The reason he didn't pay attention in school was not because he didn't have the intelligence, but because he learned everything the first time it was mentioned, and he was totally bored. You find that many people are far smarter than they realized, but as a result of previous experiences, their self-concept has them functioning at levels far below their intelligence, and that is true for you in almost every single case. Now, another important point is learning ability is malleable. Learning ability is malleable. What does that mean? Well, malleable means it can be shaped. It can be bent. It's like a metal that can be bent and pounded. Learning ability is malleable in that you can learn to learn. Wonderful thing is that human beings are learning creatures. You can learn to learn whatever you want. And the more you learn, the more we have found, the greater capacity you have to learn. Is that learning ability is like a muscle. The more you stretch it, the more you use it, the greater its capacity becomes. The more you learn math, the more capable you are of learning history. The more you study philosophy, the more capable you are of learning psychology. That your capacity to learn expands as you learn any subject. Now, there's another important point, too, with regard to learning, is that if you want to earn more, you have to learn more. If you want to earn more, you have to learn more. This is one of the most important, simple, trite little expressions that you'll ever hear, is that we live in a knowledge-based world, and your external world of earnings will be a direct reflection of the amount of useful knowledge that you take in. So if you're like me, you're probably impatient, and you probably would like to know how to learn more faster so that you can earn more faster, and that's what we're going to talk about. Our third point, by the way, is a direct relationship between longevity and learning. is that we find that the more active your mind is, the longer you live. That whenever you see cases of people beginning to develop senility in their early 60s, you see an example of a person who stopped reading a long time ago and started watching a lot of television. Senior citizens in America watch an average of 7 hours of television per day. And what it does is it makes their mind very, very passive. Their brain begins to atrophy. Their reflexes, their intelligence, their ability to respond and to be alert to their environment begins to deteriorate. The longer you learn, the longer you study, the more active you keep mentally, the more energy you have, the more vitality, the healthier you are. In fact, if you look at the lives of the great creative men and women like Goethe, began the composition of the second part of Faust when he was 85. Grandma Moses started painting at the age of 75 and was still painting at the age of 100. Albert Schweitzer, whom I worked with in Africa, was still working a full day at the age of 91, when most of the people, if not all the people he had grown up with, had been in their graves for decades. So, if for no other reason than the fact that you want to live forever, is you must become an active, intelligent learner. You must develop the capacity to learn. You must learn how to learn. Now, a few years ago, back in the 50s in Bulgaria, a man named Georgy Lazanov began some experiments that have had a tremendous influence on our thinking in the Western world in the last couple of decades. A tremendous book has been written on his work called Super Learning, talking about the results of his experiments. And Lazanov began studying the fact that information was exploding at such a rate that nobody could keep current on their field anymore. That no matter what field you were in, tens, hundreds, even thousands of articles were being written every year, that nobody could absorb the information. So he became preoccupied with the need to create a way for people to learn more rapidly. He called his system accelerated learning. We call it rapid learning. Some people call it super learning. It means the same thing. It means how can you take in more information at a faster rate? And what Lazanov found was this. He began as a pioneer of whole brain research. He found that there are really two hemispheres of the brain, and the two hemispheres of the brain perform different functions. And that people who learn the very best are capable of harmonizing and using both hemispheres of the brain. If the left hemisphere is responsible for certain functions, the right is responsible for certain functions. He also found that there's a massive tissue that divides the brains called the corpus callosum, and that children up to the age of 5 or 6 learn at about 25 times the adult rate. And his thoughts were, would it be possible to recreate the conditions that exist in early childhood that enable children to learn at a fantastic rate of speed in adult life? And so he found that in looking at the functions of the brains, he found that the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere were responsible for very different ways of thinking. Let me give you some examples. For instance, the left hemisphere is verbal. It thinks in terms of words. The right hemisphere is pictorial or artistic. It thinks in terms of pictures. The left hemisphere is analytical, whereas the right hemisphere is holistic. It sees all the facts and information. It sees the big picture, if you like. The left hemisphere is pragmatic. It's very matter-of-factual. The right hemisphere is intuitive and is the seat of intuition and feelings. The left hemisphere is concrete. It likes to see things that it can count, touch, taste, and feel. The left hemisphere, the right hemisphere is abstract. It's responsible for abstract concepts, scientific concepts, artistic or philosophic concepts. The left hemisphere is linear, in that it sees things in an orderly row, and it is also sequential, and likes to take things one thing at a time. The right hemisphere, on the other hand, is musical and artistic, if you like, and spontaneous, and is responsible for humor. The left hemisphere is responsible for language, the stringing together of words in a logical order to make sentences. It's also responsible for math. The right hemisphere is responsible for dance and for poetry. And these two hemispheres, in order to work properly, have to be harmonized. but they have very, very different functions. And as Lozanov did his research, he found another thing, is that when he studied the way that people learned, he found that people learned at different levels of brainwave activities and as a result of different things. For instance, he found that the brain functions at 4 different levels. And the first level is what is called the beta level. The beta level is 14 waves per second or above. The beta level is normal waking. This is where you and I are. Whenever our mind is very active, very intense, our brainwave activity, or what is called cycles, our brainwave activity is very frantic. This is where most of us spend most of our time. It's also the time where we learn the least efficiently. He said he found that below beta was the alpha level. The alpha level was 8 to 13 waves or cycles per second. And this was a more, if you like, modulated wave level, and he found that we have a tendency to learn in this stage. This is the deep relaxation stage. This is the stage that we're in when we're sitting deeply relaxed, when we're daydreaming, if you like, or prior to going to sleep, we drop into this level. Just below the alpha level is what is called the theta level. The theta level is 5 to 7 waves per second. The theta level has, again, bigger waves, and this theta level is where we just are starting to drop into dreaming. It's called the hallucinatory or illusionary area, where we're starting to have dreams just before we fall asleep. Have you ever had the experience of being woken up just as you're falling asleep and being jerked out suddenly from this theta level? You weren't into delta, you weren't sound asleep, and you notice how jarring it is. But what Lozanov found was the alpha theta level. This level in here is where we do our best learning. And that when we are learning at this level, our ability to learn is dramatically increased. And just below theta is delta, and delta is 1/2 to 4 waves per second. And these are long waves, if you like. Now, of course, below half a wave per second, you are no longer working. As a matter of fact, the cessation of brainwave activity on an electroencephalogram is one of the clinical definitions of death. Now, what Lozanov tried to do was, he said, would it be possible to bring people down from beta, where they're awake, into this alpha theta level and somehow activate the right and the left brains so that they work simultaneously? And he came up with a method using music and relaxation. And he began his experiments back in 1965-66 in Bulgaria. One of the most interesting experiments, he started off with language. And the language he chose was the language of French. Now, if you were to take a French course at your local university as an adult, you would be expected in a 3-hour period, and 3 hours seems to be the ideal study period for a language. You would be expected in 3 hours to learn approximately 25 to 40 words. And you'd be expected to have a retention level up until the final exam with due study and so on of about 80% and maybe less. As a matter of fact, what Lozanov found, he said that most of the ways that we learn in our society are so inefficient as to be deplorable, in that the average person who gets a university degree in our society after 4 years and $25,000 to $50,000 of expenses forgets 80 to 90% of everything they learned at the university before the summer after the university, the final year, is over. As a matter of fact, as much as 80% is lost in the first 30 days. It was been postulated by a couple of university professors, if you want to clear out most of the universities in the country, very simple way to do it, is call everybody back 48 hours after final exams to rewrite without notice. And you would find that the traditional way of learning, which is to cram the brain with as much information as possible and to rush into the exam room and regurgitate the information onto the exam and then go back and recover and do it over again, this way of learning is so inefficient that almost all the information we take in that way is lost completely. That's why if you took a language course in school and then you ever went to one of the countries where they spoke the language, you found that you probably couldn't remember more than 3 or 4 words and even those you had wrong. Well, so Lozanov decided to use music and relaxation, and this is what he did. Under very closely controlled conditions, he brought in 60 students. These 60 students were drawn from a variety of occupations. None of them had any knowledge of French at all. They were very closely monitored and screened by people who were not favorable toward this experiment. So it was very rigorously controlled. In 1966, he brought in these 60 people, and he felt that he would have to greatly increase the average level of learning in order to get approval for the establishment of his Institute of Suggestology. The Institute of Suggestology and Suggestopedia was subsequently set up in Sofia, Bulgaria. What he did is he took these people, and we had 60 people, and his goal was to get them to 150 words per session, 100 to 150 words per session with higher levels of retention. What they did is they brought them in, they played gentle, relaxing music, they turned down the lights, and they read them the words on cards with the French on one side, the Bulgarian on the other. And as they read them the words, the students repeated the words in a deeply relaxed state, and they brought them up to a state of full awareness and reviewed the words and then tested them on it. They found from the very beginning 3 sessions. First of all, review in aware state. Second of all, listening to the words in deep relaxation. Third of all, review in an aware state again. They found that from the very first session, they were getting 98% retention. In that, in testing at the end of each session, they were remembering 98% of what they learned. They conducted this experiment for 6 weeks, and every single student in the class got up to a 98% retention rate with no experience in the language at all. Now, before they disbanded this experiment in '66, he called for volunteers and got 15 more. 15 of these students volunteered, and they said, would it be possible to learn 500 words in one day? Well, they came in on a Saturday. They worked all day because nobody in recorded history had ever learned 500 words in a day. And at the end of the day, they tested out at 98% retention of 500 words. Now, an interesting point is that many of these people were suffering nervous disorders. As a matter of fact, 40% of them were drawn from the registers of psychologists and psychiatrists. And after this 6-week learning period, learning 150 words a day, almost every one of them was completely better. That there was no stress in this type of learning, that it was very, very relaxing, that they found that it cleared their minds and they felt wonderful afterwards, as opposed to our current way of learning, which is so stressful and so tense and so competitive. They found that after this 500 words, at the end of the day, everybody felt great. There was no stress, no fatigue, nothing. Well, he said, let's see if it's possible to increase this before we disband the experiment. And he called back 12 of the students, the best learners. 2 weeks later, they got together to see if they could learn 1,000 words in one day. 1,000 brand new words in one day. The result of it was that at the end of the day, they were able to learn the 1,000 words and test out at 98%. Interesting, later on, about 6 months later, they brought these students all back to see how much of the language they had retained with no opportunity to read in it, no opportunity to speak it. They found that they tested out at 69% recall without any review, and with one review, the entire class was back up to 98%. In other words, this method of music with deep relaxation, dropping into alpha theta and activating both brains had led to a dramatic increase in learning ability. Now, in 1974, Lazonov, under a controlled experiment, got the rate up to 1,800 words in one day, with 98% retention. In 1979, in a special experiment with selected students, Lazonov got the rate up to 3,000 words in one day. In other words, by activating the brain and with still 98% retention. Now, this is a phenomenal thing. It's almost an unheard of thing to believe. But what Lazonov has found is that the learning capacity of the brain is infinite. That the capacity of your brain to learn and to take in information. For example, if you speak English well, you probably speak and use about 1,200 to 2,000 words in the course of your day-to-day life. All you need is 2,000 words to be functionally fluent in any language. The average English-speaking person uses less than 1,200 words. As a matter of fact, some people, and especially as you go down the educational ladder, use sometimes less than 500 words in their entire language. But 2,000 words will enable you to read any newspaper, any magazine, watch any program, radio, television, except something of a technical nature. What Lazonov proved was that it's possible for a person to learn one language per day, permanently. Now, this learning technology is beginning to change the way that we learn. It's beginning to revolutionize all of our understandings about language. Lazonov has also developed many other techniques and understandings. He found that gentle classical music is a critical part of this learning. That Baroque music, with 60-beat Baroque, that slows down the heart rate and slows down the brainwave activity rate so that the body and the mind get into sync with the music and the incoming information is critical, that you can learn technical subjects, you can learn medicine, philosophy, psychology. I have taken extended courses now in accelerated or optimal learning to learn these methodologies, and what I have found is that you can learn, even without any of the science or technology, you can learn things very, very rapidly if you'll do 2 or 3 things. Here are the keys to speeding up the way that you learn. Number 1 is define what it is you want to learn and need to learn in order to be more successful and more effective. You cannot learn something that you're not interested in. You cannot learn something that does not hold your attention. You cannot learn something that is boring. So make sure that what you're studying is important to you. So number 1 is to define it. And when you begin to study, define your purpose. Why are you learning this subject? Think it through, read it through, study it, and only study things with an aim in mind. Remember, you have to have a goal. Number 2 is you must have an intense desire to learn. You must have a desire. In other words, you cannot learn because somebody else wants you to learn. Number 3 is always study, when you can, with classical music. Gentle classical music with no words. Gentle classical music of any kind, especially music from the classical period of Mozart, Bach, Brahms, Dvorak, Beethoven, and Stravinsky, for instance. These composers have a classical 60-beat Baroque backbeat within their music. And if you play with classical music or even environmental sounds like the sounds of waves or the oceans, white music as it's called, if you have that in the background, it relaxes the brain, it opens the left and the right hemisphere, and it allows information to come in through the left brain and be internalized into the right brain where it is stored in the seat of memory. So what you want to do is through music you want to relax the corpus callosum, relax the brain so that information can flow in through the left brain and into the right. A 4th key point is spaced repetition. Spaced repetition is important. Now some people say, why is it, or how is it that I can give a seminar like this all day without notes? And I sometimes do day after day after day of seminars without notes. I must have a great memory. I don't have a great memory. I just study all the time, and I use spaced repetition, and I review it over and over again. There's another thing, too, by the way, is that the more you learn, the more you learn. When you start to study, remember that it takes practice to learn how to learn. It takes practice, practice, practice. Is that the more you practice learning how to learn, the more likely it is that you'll learn. The first few days when you're studying a new subject, you'll find it takes tremendous effort. Now here's another important point, and that is variety. Variety of stimulation is critical. The number of different ways that you stimulate your mind, different books, different magazines, plays, different exposures to different conversations, different subjects, and so on. If you bombard your mind continuously with stimuli that challenges your mind, you will find that you'll develop the capacity to learn and remember more. And number 7 is remember this. It's called attention span. Is the time when you learn the most is at the beginning of a period of study and at the end of a period of study. What does this tell you? It tells you that instead of studying or reading for a long period of time like this, say 2 or 3 hours, what you do is break it up and take several breaks so that you have a series of breaks. And you'll always remember what you learn at the beginning of the break, at the beginning of the period, at the end of the period, the beginning and end. So the more breaks that you can take, the more variety that you can put into your studying, the faster you'll learn. The key to remember this is that everything that you are or ever will become is going to be as a result of the information you take into your mind. The practical, usable information that you can take and use to bring about some kind of improvement in the world around you. If you want to earn more, you have to learn more. If you want to be happier, you have to learn more. If you want to realize your full potential as a human being, you have to learn more, which means read, study, and learn how to learn. And if you'll do that, you'll be amazed at how much of your mental potential you can release.
Session 14, Progressive Relaxation with Music.
The work of Georgy Lazanov in establishing the sciences of suggestology and suggestopedia, which is the application of the power of suggestion to the process of learning, also have applications with regard to you and I in terms of reprogramming our subconscious mind. You see, if we can learn a subject like French or English, if we can learn history or mathematics, if we can learn something very, very fast as a result of deep relaxation with music in a systematic, organized process, can't we also learn new belief systems? Can't we also learn new ideas, concepts, characteristics, qualities? Can we develop confidence, courage, the ability to earn more money, the ability to be better parents, better bosses, and so on, using the same techniques? Yes, we can. Now, over the years and over the centuries, over all the course of mankind, great mystics, great leaders, great religious teachers, great philosophers and thinkers have found that by relaxing deeply, even without music, just relaxing deeply and meditating or dwelling on particular thoughts or ideas, whether it's a quality or a mantra or something else, deep relaxation and meditation on a particular thought enables us to internalize the thought. Let me talk about this for a second. The key is deep relaxation. Remember, we talked about the law of relaxation that says the harder that you don't try, the better it works. In all mental working, effort defeats itself. Therefore, whenever you present new information to your mind in a state of deep relaxation, it is accepted far more rapidly. If you want to become a positive, outgoing, enthusiastic, wealthy, influential, successful human being, you must change your mental programming so that your internal programming, your beliefs, your self-concept, your essential fundamental convictions are consistent with what you wish to experience in the outside. And deep relaxation is the key. That relaxation is the key to the vault of riches. That relaxation is what unlocks your tapped potential. And most of our modern times have been spent on finding ways to do things harder, to force things, to drive things, but we're finding more and more as we study the history of man and the Eastern religions and the research that's been done in this field that deep relaxation is the key. Even Harvard University has done experiments on relaxation and found that even one process of deep relaxation changes brainwave activity over that of people who don't. Now, there's several ways. One is meditation. Well, what is meditation? Meditation is simply closing your eyes, taking a deep breath, dropping into alpha. It's as simple as that. As you take a deep breath and close your eyes, you drop into alpha, and your brainwave activity from here just goes here. When you sit on a park bench and daydream, you're in a form of meditation with your eyes closed. Meditation is very, very healthy, restful, very refreshing, and many people have gotten into what is called transcendental meditation, which is really a systematization of the process of meditation, where you take a mantra and you sit down, close your eyes, relax, and you repeat the mantra. Now, what is a mantra? A mantra is merely a meaningless word. Dr. Herbert Benson at Harvard University found that if you just repeat the word one over and over again, that'll be good enough. In terms of closing your eyes, repeating the word one each time you exhale, you'll drop into a state of meditation in a matter of a few seconds, even if you've never done it before. Now, meditation is very healthy. What does it do? It relaxes the whole body. It relaxes the mind. It integrates the personality. It causes you to feel more calm and more assured. It lowers your flash point in that it causes you to be more self-assured and less likely to get angry, to get tense. It causes you to sleep better at night. It causes you to digest better. It causes you to achieve your goals better, and so on. So meditation or deep relaxation is an essential part of you achieving your potential. Sometimes people say, I don't have the time to do this. Whenever you don't have the time, that's the time when you have to do it the most. Anything that takes you into a state of deep relaxation brings you down to the point where your mind can function in the levels of alpha and can integrate your personality. There's a whole science called the science of psychosynthesis that says that meditation on any subject actually synthesizes and integrates and brings together the mind. Well, what Lazanov also found that if you combine relaxation with music, and this is the second part, you can accelerate the process. That when you play gentle music, when you are in a state of deep relaxation, you actually go deeper into relaxation, your mind relaxes even deeper, and as a result you function better. And if you combine relaxation plus music plus informational input, or the input of words or ideas, that you can learn at an accelerated rate. You can bring about rapid and permanent behavioral changes. On the market today, there's a great number of subliminal tapes where they play words hidden beneath the sounds of music or ocean waves or something like that. Now, there's a tremendous amount of research that shows that subliminal tapes work. Many of the subliminal tapes that are sold are not based on that research. They're based on other principles, and I suggest you look at it very carefully before you buy them, because some of them are completely useless, overpriced and useless. Some of them are excellent. But music plus informational input causes the conscious mind, which is the mind that says, wait a second, I'm not taking in that information, causes the conscious mind, the guard at the door of the subconscious, it causes it to relax and fall asleep. And when the subconscious mind falls asleep, the words with the music combined flow straight into the subconscious mind, change and revise all previous programming, and bring about permanent behavioral change. We call this the process of taped affirmation, which I'm going to explain in a second. But let me give you just a brief explanation with regard to Muzak. There are many systems now that have been developed, Muzak systems, which play sort of neutral music as background music in offices, warehouses, and stores. In a Montreal experiment, in a Dominion stores experiment some years ago, they put under the Muzak system a series of messages that said, do not shoplift. Shoplifting is bad. If you shoplift, you'll be caught and you'll be prosecuted. If you shoplift, when you're prosecuted, you'll get a criminal record. So shoplifting is something that you shouldn't do. And they repeated these messages over and over again, but they were inaudible to the human ear. The only thing that shoppers could hear was music. Now, this was a store that was in an area where there was a lot of shoplifting. They found that they played this for a period of 2 months. For 2 months, they played this message under the Muzak system, and in 2 months, the level of shoplifting dropped 50% in that store. They left it on for 2 months, and it stayed at that level, and then they put back the regular music. Over the course of the next 2 months, the level of shoplifting went right back up to normal. They are now using this same process, by the way, where they will put Muzak, there's sales messages, for instance, in sales organizations, they will put a whole series of messages behind the Muzak system. They'll tell everybody that they're there, because they'll say, you love to sell, you're a great salesperson, you love this product, you eagerly make calls, you are a good closer, you're a good prospector, you manage your time well. A whole series of messages like that, which will be played behind the Muzak system, and they will find that sales will go up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%. In some warehouse operations, they have systems where they'll have a Muzak system that says, do not steal from your employer, do not pilfer from the warehouse, and so on. They'll find that theft and pilferage will drop 20, 30, 40% in a matter of a very short period of time. Now, this brings us to what we call taped affirmation, which is progressive relaxation with music. Taped affirmation is absolutely wonderful. Taped affirmation is a way of putting your goals onto a tape with music and playing them over and over to yourself in a relaxed state so that they bypass the conscious mind, drop into the subconscious, and begin to come true in your reality. I began using taped affirmation several years ago. I have now thousands of graduates who use taped affirmation. I'll just tell you this, is that every single goal I have ever put on a musical tape and played to myself over and over again has materialized in my reality. Every single one of them has come true, and some of them in a surprisingly short period of time. This is one of the most astonishing discoveries. Like taped learning is one of the most astonishing discoveries in education. Taped affirmation is one of the most astonishing discoveries in the whole process of goal setting and goal achieving. You can change your personality, achieve goals, increase your income, lose weight, quit smoking. You can do remarkable things with your life, and you can do it rapidly and permanently using this method. Now, here's some of the keys to taped affirmation that you should understand. Number one is a form of progressive relaxation with music. Progressive relaxation is a method of going through the body with words and relaxing each muscle group. So when you play the tape, you will hear a voice that will count you down and be more and more relaxed, and each part of your body relaxes deeper and deeper and deeper, and you get more and more and more deeply relaxed. You'll find that all the tension is let out of your whole body. As your body completely relaxes, you'll find your conscious mind relaxes and you drop into alpha. Now, a second is that this is a form of what is called heterogenic conditioning. Now, heterogenic conditioning means hetero means other and genic means mind. So in this, we use the word you. It's a conditioning process so that when you listen to the tape, it always says you. you like yourself very much. You really like yourself. Or you accept complete responsibility for your life. It uses affirmations that are very simple and clear, positive, present tense, but they in the you case. Why? It's because whenever we listen to another voice, even if you make your own tape with your own voice, you always use you. Whenever we take in information from another voice, we are accustomed from infancy to our parents or someone else saying you. Now, there are some people who say that you're supposed to put on the tape the words I earn or I weigh or I like myself. But whenever we listen to somebody else talking about themselves, it makes no impression on our subconscious. So when you make a tape that you listen to, it's always you taking the message in. When you speak to yourself, it's always I. I am, I can, I do. Our third point is that this is healthy. This is relaxing. And this is refreshing. You will find that if you play this tape, which is about 20 minutes, and we're going to give you this tape in a little while, if you play this tape, when you come home in the evening, if you play it in the middle of the day, it's better than a nap. It's better than taking a sleep. It's better than a steam bath because it will relax you, it will refresh you, and you'll feel healthy. And even if it does nothing else, it makes you feel great. Now, a third or fourth requirement is that you do it twice daily. Optimum is to do it twice daily, morning and evening, and do it on an empty stomach. The very best time to play this tape is in the morning before you have breakfast, and the evening after you come home but before you have dinner. If you can only do it once a day, do it in the evening. It's better than a drink. It's better than a Valium. It's better than a Librium. It will refresh you, pick you up, smooth your personality, make you feel just great about yourself. So do it twice daily. Number 5 is that we use relaxing, gentle music. Now, you can use almost any music you like. The slower, the more relaxing, the more classical music that you use. You can use Baroque. You can use the sound of the ocean. You can use gentle classical music from any piece that you like. But relaxing, gentle music in the background is what causes the mind to relax and relax and relax. You can use flute music. You can use guitar. You can use violin. You can use anything that is relaxing to cause you to calm and settle down. But not music or anything that has words to it. Now, another characteristic of this is that the position that you use, we call this assuming the position, is to sit erect, relaxed, eyes closed. We call this assuming the position. And basically the position is you sit in a chair, you sit completely erect, you put your hands on your lap, not touching, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and just listen to the tape. The tape is complete. All you have to do is put it on, and it will count you down into a state of deep relaxation, very much like this, into a state of deep relaxation. While you're in that state of relaxation, it will play a series of 10 affirmations, 5 each. And at the end of the 10 affirmations, it will then count you back out to a state of full awareness. The entire process takes 21 minutes, maximum. It's very simple. It's completely harmless. You don't have to worry about it. Now, it's very important with regard to this position that you be sitting erect. Some people say, well, can I do it before I go to sleep? Well, what happens if you try to do it in bed or laying down is one of two things. Either you'll fall asleep, and when you fall asleep, the message stops going into the subconscious mind, or number 2 is you will become so relaxed and refreshed that you'll wake up and you'll be unable to sleep. The best time to do this is not before you go to bed, unless, of course, you're having difficulty sleeping. We've had many people who've been going through stressful periods in their life who have found that by playing this, sometimes 5, 6, 7 times a day, they've been able to completely calm down, get over their insomnia, and sleep deeply for the first time. So number 7 is do it with no interruptions. Go somewhere where you can play it where there's no interruptions. If you're near a telephone, disconnect the phone or go away from the phone. There's nothing worse than playing this tape and having a telephone go off in the middle or having somebody walk in on you. Sometimes people say, well, can I play it in my car? I say, yes, you can play it in your car as long as you drive your car with your eyes closed. People say, well, can I do it when I'm jogging? Yes, if you jog with your eyes closed. Because if your eyes are open, this is critical, if your eyes are open, your eyes are bombarded with so much stimulation that you do not drop into alpha. So it's important to remember that. Remember, no interruptions. Do it twice a day. Do it on an empty stomach. Don't do it after drinking anything. Don't do it after eating anything. And don't do it after smoking anything stronger than a cigarette. Now, what will happen as a result of this? This process takes just two things. It takes discipline, which is what most people lack, which is why most people fail, and it takes repetition. It's very simple. Repetition. What will happen? Well, the first time that you use this, you will notice a deep relaxation. As a matter of fact, many people have said they've relaxed more deeply with this tape than with any other process they've ever tried. And these are people who've tried meditation and tried a lot of other things. Second of all, you will find that in a very short period of time, about 2 or 3 days, you will find yourself feeling far calmer. You feel far more relaxed. You feel sort of good about yourself. And you find that your flashpoint, your levels of tension have dropped. Within a week, the people around you will know the difference. They'll say, you're doing something different. Within a month, people who only know you marginally will notice that there is a difference in your personality. A good friend of mine, who's a psychologist, pointed out to me that the way that he first noticed the effect of this tape was that he used to get very, very tense in traffic. He'd be driving along in traffic and somebody would cut him off, or he'd be stuck in traffic. He'd get very, very angry. What he would do is, he found when he played the tape, is that he didn't get tense anymore. He would just relax, and found that he might get angry, but he would be only angry for a few seconds, then he'd be calm again. So it's very, very healthy. By the way, you cannot play this tape and be a stressful type of person. Now, how many goals can you work on? Well, you make your own tape, and you can work on 10 to 15 goals on your tape. When you write out the goals, what you do is you repeat at the beginning of each goal, which is a positive present tense affirmation, you repeat, yes, I agree. Or, yes, that's true. What this does is it reinforces the affirmation and drives it deeper into the subconscious. For instance, you're listening to the tape, you close your eyes, the tape says, you like yourself unconditionally, you really like yourself, and you say, yes, that's true. Yes, I agree. So when you say that to your mind, you're acknowledging to your subconscious that this is a true statement. Remember, in affirmations, the most powerful effect on your subconscious is what you say to yourself and believe. If a person were to say to you, you sure look good today, and you say, yes, I do. Notice how much better you would feel about that than if you say, no, I don't. I look a little bit ragged. So always agree and accept it. Repeat it. The number 11 important point on this is to do it over and over again until it becomes a habit. Put your own affirmations. Take your own affirmations with regard to your goals. For instance, if you want to lose weight, put your ideal weight on there. If you want to increase your income, put your ideal income on there. If you want to change your temperament, put your temperament. If you want to be a better time manager, put better time management. If you want to be more creative, then put creativity on there. Do you want to have more energy? Then put energy on there. Do you want to sleep at night? Then put sleep at night on there. Anything that you desire in life, you can accomplish using this method and using the instructions that we've given you. If you want to make your own tape, it's very simple. Pick a piece of relaxing music, play it on your record player, put a cassette on a separate cassette recorder, and with the music in the background, read the script onto the cassette program, and then read your own affirmations and repeat each of them 5 times. If you'll do that and then read the whole script, then you have your own tape, and as you achieve your goals, what you can do is make a new tape and make a 2 tape. The tape that we supply you with this program is good enough to last you for a long time because it's been developed over years of experimenting with other people, and we find that the 10 goals on this tape are the 10 most important. If you use this method of taped affirmation in a very short period of time, you'll notice changes in your life, changes in your results, changes in your health, changes in your temperament, changes in your personality. And I will repeat what I said before, I have never set a goal on taped affirmation that I have not accomplished exactly at the right time, exactly in the right way. And it will work for you as it has worked for me. Good luck.